Marry me, Caleb. Not as a joke. Not as a favor. Right here, in front of everyone. Daddy, don't answer yet, Lily said. She hasn't told the truth. The crystal ballroom of the Grand Ellison Hotel went so still that even the soft clink of silverware seemed too loud. Under chandeliers bright enough to make diamonds look ordinary, Caleb Turner stood in a faded maintenance shirt with a streak of white paint across one sleeve, one hand still holding the brass screwdriver he had used to fix a loose chair leg minutes earlier. Beside him, his 8-year-old daughter Lily clutched the hem of his work jacket, her small face lifted toward Victoria Hayes, the billionaire CEO, whose name appeared on magazine covers, stock reports, charity banners, and buildings Caleb had only ever entered through side doors. A man near the champagne table let out a sharp laugh, then swallowed it when nobody joined him. A woman in pearls leaned toward her husband and whispered that Victoria had finally lost her mind. At the front of the room, Preston Vale, the polished heir everyone expected Victoria to marry, smiled like he had just witnessed a mistake worth owning. Caleb did not move. He was used to being looked past, talked over, called when something broke and forgotten when it worked again. He had learned long ago that dignity was not the same as pride. Pride needed applause. Dignity could stand quietly in work boots on a marble floor and still not bow. Victoria's hand trembled, though only Lily seemed to notice. The CEO's silver evening gown caught the light like frost on a winter window, but her eyes did not look cold anymore. They looked cornered, tired, almost afraid. Mr. Turner, Preston said, his voice smooth enough to sound polite and cruel at the same time. I'm sure Ms. Hayes appreciates your service, but this is a private donor event, not a staff meeting. A few guests smiled because rich people often mistake cruelty for wit when it comes wrapped in good tailoring. Caleb gently placed his screwdriver on a nearby table. My daughter and I were leaving, he said. Then leave, Preston replied. With whatever is left of your self-respect. Lily tightened her grip. Caleb's jaw shifted, but he did not answer. He simply stepped half an inch in front of his daughter, the way fathers do when the world forgets there is a child listening. Victoria saw it. That tiny movement. That quiet shield. Not anger. Not performance. Love, trained by years of bills, grief, lunchboxes, late shifts, and promises kept on tired knees beside a child's bed. 48 hours earlier, Caleb had been invisible to her. Just a man in a Navy uniform pushing a tool cart through a hallway while she arrived with attorneys, assistants, and a merger worth more than half the city block. But now every bright, wealthy, important face in the ballroom had faded behind him. Caleb, Victoria whispered, and for the first time that night, she said his name like it mattered. Lily looked up at her father, then back at the woman who had asked for forever, as if forever could be spoken in panic. Her voice was small, but it traveled farther than any microphone. My daddy can marry someone poor, someone rich, or no one at all, she said. But he can't marry someone who only needs him when she's scared. The room froze. Victoria's lips parted, but no answer came. And in that silence, the richest woman in the room suddenly looked like the one person who had nothing left to hide. 48 hours before that ballroom forgot how to breathe, Caleb Turner woke before the sun in a one-bedroom apartment behind Miller's Cleaners on the east side of Providence. The radiator knocked twice in the wall, the refrigerator hummed like an old truck at idle, and a thin blue dawn pressed against the blinds. He lay still for 1 second longer than usual, not because he was lazy, but because Lily's hand was tucked inside his, and fathers who have already lost one heartbeat learn not to rush the ones they still have. Daddy, she murmured without opening her eyes. Are you going to work? Soon, sweetheart. Big hotel. Big enough. Do they have pancakes? Caleb smiled in the dark. They have people who eat pancakes. She nodded solemnly, as if that answered the whole economy of the world. Then she rolled over and hugged the stuffed rabbit her mother had bought at a pharmacy 2 weeks before the cancer came back, when everyone was still pretending hope was a schedule that could be kept. Caleb sat up carefully, his knees aching from years of ladders, tile floors, bus rides, and work that asked for his strength but never remembered his name. He had once built custom cabinets from walnut and maple in a shop that smelled like sawdust, coffee, and future plans. He had once sketched a storefront sign that read Turner Fine Woodworks, with a little lily carved into the corner for his daughter. Then hospital bills arrived, customers disappeared, grief moved in, and dreams became something he folded away like a church suit worn only for funerals. In the kitchen, he packed Lily's lunch with the care of a man preparing treasure. Peanut butter sandwich cut into triangles. Apple slices with cinnamon. 2 crackers shaped like stars. He checked the small envelope taped beneath the cupboard, counted the cash inside, then put $3 back because the school field trip was coming and Lily had not asked twice. That was her kindness. She wanted things quietly. At 6:30, she appeared in the doorway wearing pink socks, a denim jumper, and hair so tangled it looked like sleep had built a nest in it. "I made you something," she said, holding out a folded note. Caleb opened it. In purple crayon, she had written, "Be brave, Daddy." Under the words, she had drawn him with enormous boots and a tiny crown. He laughed softly, then looked away before she could see his eyes shine. "A crown?" he asked. "Because you are king of fixing stuff. That is a serious title. You should tell people. People know when the door opens right." She studied him with the old soul seriousness children carry when life has made them listen too early. "Mommy would say you matter even if nobody claps." Caleb touched the note to his chest. Outside, a city bus sighed at the curb, brakes hissing in the cold morning air. He walked Lily 3 blocks to St. Anne's Elementary, past a bakery waking up, a pawn shop still asleep, and puddles that reflected a sky turning gold by inches. At the gate, she hugged him hard. "Be brave," she repeated. "You too," he said. "And remember, kindness is not weakness." She looked back once before disappearing through the doors, and Caleb stood there until she was gone. Then he turned toward the bus stop with his tool bag in one hand and his daughter's note in his shirt pocket, not knowing that by the end of the next 2 days, the most powerful woman at the Grand Ellison would need that same lesson more than anyone in the city. By 7:45, Caleb stepped through the service entrance of the Grand Ellison with his tool bag against his hip and Lily's purple note resting over his heart like a quiet blessing. The back hallway smelled of lemon polish, warm laundry, and coffee that had been sitting too long. Delivery carts rolled past him. Kitchen staff called out breakfast orders. Somewhere beyond the walls, a string quartet rehearsed for a charity gala that would cost more than Caleb made in 6 months. "Morning, Turner," said Frank Bell, the night engineer, handing him a clipboard. "Suite elevator is acting strange again. I will take a look. And the West Ballroom has a loose chair problem. Put it on the list. Big people coming today." Caleb gave a faint smile. "Chairs do not care how rich people are." Frank laughed, but Caleb was already moving, steady as a man who knew the worth of work even when nobody bowed to it. He checked boiler gauges, tightened a brass handle on the 15th floor, and repaired a jammed service door with a washer he had saved in an old mint tin. He did not waste motion. He did not chase attention. Every task received the same respect, whether it belonged to a penthouse guest or a housekeeper carrying towels with tired wrists. At 9:12, the front entrance changed. The lobby staff straightened before the revolving doors even turned. 2 black sedans stopped beneath the awning, their tires whispering over wet pavement, and Victoria Hayes walked into the Grand Ellison as if the building had been waiting for permission to stand taller. She was stunning in a cream wool coat, dark heels, and a silk scarf the color of winter sky. Her blonde hair was swept back with effortless precision, her face calm enough to silence a room before she entered it. Reporters outside the ropes called her name, but she did not pause. Assistants moved around her like weather around a mountain. "The board call is at 10. The Vale dinner is confirmed. Preston wants 5 minutes alone." Victoria stopped near the marble fountain. "Preston always wants something." Her voice was graceful, controlled, and almost empty. In public, she was the woman who could turn a failing company into a national headline by lunch. In private, she had slept 3 hours, eaten nothing but half a piece of toast, and read the same legal letter until the words lost their shape. The letter said her company could survive the merger only if the Hayes family voting bloc stayed united. Her uncle had made the condition plain. Marry Preston Vale, secure the alliance, protect the empire. Love was not mentioned. Trust was not mentioned. Only control. Victoria stepped into the private elevator with her chief counsel, Elaine Porter, whose silver glasses made every concern look official. "You can still refuse," Elaine said softly. "Refusing has consequences. So does surrender." Victoria looked at her reflection in the polished doors and saw what the magazines saw: beauty, discipline, money, power. Then the elevator rose, and for one breath, her expression cracked into something no camera had ever caught. Fear. Not of losing wealth. Not of gossip. Fear of waking up 10 years from now inside a perfect life that had no truth in it. The elevator lights flickered once. Elaine looked up. Victoria's hand tightened around the rail. The doors opened on the top floor before either woman spoke, and Caleb, kneeling beside the control panel with a small flashlight between his teeth, glanced up from his work. For half a second, the billionaire and the maintenance man simply looked at each other. She saw paint on his sleeve, kindness in his eyes, and no desire to impress her. He saw a beautiful woman surrounded by expensive silence. "Ma'am," he said, standing, "you may want to use the east elevator today. This one is pretending to be dependable." Elaine blinked at the plainness of it. Victoria almost smiled. Almost. Then Preston Vale appeared at the end of the corridor holding a phone, wearing a navy suit and the patient confidence of a man who believed every locked door had already been opened for him. "Victoria," he called. "We need to talk about our announcement." Caleb lowered his eyes and stepped aside. He knew how to disappear when powerful people arrived. But Victoria, for reasons she could not explain, looked back at him once before walking away. That evening, rain covered Providence in a silver veil, turning the avenues around the Grand Ellison into rivers of reflected gold, red taillights, and trembling street lamp halos. Inside the hotel, the upper floors glowed with quiet wealth. White orchids stood in tall glass vases. Piano notes drifted from the lounge like warm breath against winter glass. Far below the guest suites, Caleb finished replacing a cracked hinge in the service pantry, then checked his watch. 7:18. Lily would be waiting at Mrs. Donnelly's apartment with homework done, sneakers by the door, and a question about whether he remembered dinner. He packed his tools, wiped his hands, and reached for his coat when his radio clicked with static. "Turner, we have a problem with elevator 3. Is anyone inside?" "One guest. Top priority. Dispatch says the cab stopped between the 22nd and 23rd floors." Caleb's hand paused over the zipper of his bag. "I am on my way." Upstairs, behind polished metal doors, Victoria Hayes stood alone beneath dim emergency lights, one palm against the wall, the other pressed lightly to her chest as the elevator gave a low mechanical sigh. She had been leaving a private meeting with Preston, a meeting full of perfect sentences and empty promises. "This marriage protects both families. You know the board expects stability. Do not make sentiment expensive." She had said nothing because silence was the only place left where nobody could negotiate with her. Then the lights flickered. The elevator stopped. The air thinned around her, not truly, but in the old frightened corner of her mind where she was still 9 years old, locked by accident in a dark storage room at her father's estate, while adults argued downstairs about money, reputation, and who would inherit what. Victoria closed her eyes. "No," she whispered. "Not now." Her phone showed no signal. The emergency speaker crackled, then failed. She drew one careful breath, then another, but the wall seemed closer with each second. From outside, a voice came through the narrow seam of the doors, calm and low. "Ma'am, this is Caleb from engineering. I am right here." Victoria lifted her head. "How long?" "Long enough for me to do this right. Not long enough for you to worry alone." Something in that answer steadied her more than any expensive consultant ever had. "Are you always that certain?" she asked, trying to sound composed. "No, ma'am. I am just careful when someone is scared." There was a pause, a soft scrape of tools, the clean turn of a manual release key. Caleb spoke every few moments, not filling the air with noise, but placing words like lanterns along a dark path. "You may hear a click. That is normal. The cab is stable. Keep both feet where they are. You are doing fine." The doors opened several inches, then wider, revealing Caleb braced safely in the corridor, rainlight from a tall window, behind him, painting his shoulders in pale blue. Victoria stood still, beautiful and shaken, her scarf loosened, her polished mask almost gone. He offered his hand, not reaching too far, not claiming authority over her fear. "Step toward my voice," he said. She did. Her heel touched the hallway carpet, then the other, and the moment she cleared the elevator, her knees weakened from relief. Caleb did not grab her. He simply guided her toward a velvet bench near a vase of lilies, and placed his work coat gently around her shoulders. It smelled faintly of cedar, soap, and honest labor. "You are safe now," he said. Victoria stared at him as if those 4 words had crossed a distance no airplane could measure. After a moment, she opened her purse and pulled out a checkbook with hands still unsteady. "What do I owe you?" Caleb looked at the checkbook, then at her face. "Nothing. Everyone wants something. Kindness is not an invoice." The hallway grew quiet around them. Downstairs, the city kept shining through the storm. Victoria lowered the pen, unable to speak, because the man in the worn uniform had just given her what no contract, boardroom, or fortune had ever managed to offer without a condition: grace. Morning came to the Grand Ellison, washed clean by rain, with sunlight pouring through the glass roof in long golden ribbons and the marble lobby shining as if the storm had polished every inch by hand. Caleb arrived at 7 with damp hair, a thermos of black coffee, and Lily beside him because St. Anne's Elementary had closed for a teacher conference. She wore a yellow cardigan, white sneakers, and a blue backpack covered in tiny embroidered daisies, walking carefully so she would not step on the hotel's bright brass lines in the floor. "This place looks like a castle," she whispered. "A castle with plumbing issues," Caleb replied. "Do princesses have plumbing issues?" "The honest ones do." Lily giggled, and for one beautiful second, the lobby felt less like a place built for strangers with money and more like a room where a child could belong. Caleb set her at a quiet table near the east alcove with a cranberry muffin from the staff cafeteria, a cup of orange juice, and her sketchbook. "Stay where I can see you." "I know. No wandering." "I know. And if anyone asks?" "My dad fixes the castle." He touched 2 fingers to her forehead in their private little blessing and went to repair a loose panel by the concierge desk. Across the lobby, Victoria Hayes stepped out of the elevator in a pale blue dress beneath a tailored white coat, her face composed again, her beauty bright enough to draw glances without asking for them. Yet something had changed. She walked slower past the place where she had sat wrapped in Caleb's coat the night before. The memory stayed with her, not like embarrassment, but like a candle hidden in a large cold house. She heard a pencil scratching paper and turned. Lily was drawing with serious concentration, her small tongue tucked against one corner of her mouth. The page showed 3 people standing beneath a huge tree: a tall man with work boots, a little girl with flowers in her hair, and beside them, a third figure made only of light. No face, no hands, just a soft empty shape filled with yellow. Victoria paused. "That is a lovely picture." Lily looked up, cautious but polite. "Thank you. May I ask who they are?" "That is me. That is Daddy. That is Mommy." Victoria studied the bright shape. "Why did you draw your mother that way?" Lily touched the yellow with the tip of her pencil. "Because she is not gone. She is in heaven. Daddy says love does not disappear. It just changes rooms." The words entered Victoria gently, then stayed. Her own childhood had been full of large rooms and expensive furniture, but love had often felt like a guest who never removed its coat. "Your father says that? He says it when I miss her at bedtime. Does it help?" Lily thought about it with the honesty of a child who refused to decorate pain. Sometimes I still cry. Daddy does too, but he turns his face so I cannot see." Victoria looked across the lobby at Caleb kneeling near the concierge desk, tightening a small screw with careful patience while a guest stepped around him without thanks. The man had grief, debt, work, and a child watching his every move, yet he carried it all without making the world pay admission to his sorrow. Lily studied Victoria's polished shoes, then her calm face. "Are you rich?" Victoria blinked. "Yes." "Really rich?" "Yes." "Then can I ask something?" "Of course." Lily leaned closer, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret in church. "Do rich people still get lonely?" For the first time that morning, Victoria had no prepared answer. Her throat tightened, and the lobby around her seemed to grow softer, quieter, more honest. Caleb looked over then, saw the billionaire standing beside his daughter, and started toward them with concern. But Victoria did not move away. She knelt carefully so her eyes were level with Lily's and whispered, "Yes, sweetheart. Sometimes they are the loneliest people in the room." Lily nodded, not surprised, only sad in that pure way children are sad for wounded things. Then she tore a clean sheet from her sketchbook, drew a tiny door with sunlight under it, and handed it to Victoria. "Then maybe you need a better room." Victoria took the paper with both hands, and in the middle of the most beautiful hotel in Providence, surrounded by flowers, glass, polished stone, and people rushing toward important meetings, the billionaire CEO found herself unable to speak because an 8-year-old girl had just offered her something no empire had ever given her, a way back to her own heart. By late afternoon, the Grand Ellison had transformed from a beautiful hotel into a glittering monument to influence. Florists carried white roses through the lobby. Servers arranged silver trays beneath crystal sconces. A harpist tested quiet notes near the grand staircase while donors in tailored jackets and evening dresses began arriving beneath the awning, their laughter clean, expensive, and practiced. Caleb had been assigned to stay near the West Ballroom in case anything broke before the Hayes Foundation dinner. Lily sat in a staff-approved corner behind a decorative screen with her sketchbook, a paper cup of lemonade, and the careful patience of a child who knew her father could not afford to miss a shift. "You all right there, kiddo?" Caleb asked, adjusting the collar of his fresh navy maintenance shirt. "I am fine. You sure?" "Daddy, I have survived math worksheets. I can survive fancy people." He smiled, but something in his chest tightened when he saw how small she looked beside the towering flowers and polished brass. In the ballroom, Victoria Hayes stood near the stage with cameras flashing around her. She wore an ivory gown beneath a soft pearl wrap, her blonde hair pinned with simple elegance, her face so composed that nobody would have guessed she still carried Lily's drawing folded inside her clutch. Preston Vale remained at her side, charming every donor, touching her elbow when he spoke, smiling as if the evening already belonged to him. "The announcement should come before dessert," he murmured. "People give more when they feel history happening." Victoria looked toward the service doors. "Is that what this is to you?" "It is what it must be. And if I say no?" Preston's smile barely moved. "Then the board questions your stability, your uncle withdraws support, and the merger becomes vulnerable. Sentiment is costly, Victoria." She turned away before he could see the flicker of disgust in her eyes. Across the room, a sudden crack sounded under a guest's chair, not loud, but enough to turn heads. The guest stood, embarrassed. Preston saw Caleb entering with his tool bag and seized the moment with a polished little laugh. "Excellent timing," he said, raising his voice just enough for nearby donors to hear. "The hotel has provided a man for that." Caleb crossed the carpet calmly. "Sir, I can take care of it." "I am sure you can." Preston stepped aside, then looked at the circle of wealthy guests gathering for entertainment they would later deny enjoying. "Everyone needs a place in the world. Some of us build companies. Some of us fix chairs." A thin ripple of laughter moved through the group. Caleb knelt beside the damaged leg, setting his tools on a folded cloth so he would not scratch the floor. He did not answer. He checked the joint, tightened the support, and tested the balance with steady hands. Lily had come out from behind the screen and now stood near a column, watching. Preston noticed her. "Your daughter?" he asked. Caleb looked up. "Yes. Beautiful child. You must want better for her than this." Caleb rose slowly, holding the repaired chair by its back. "This feeds her. There is no shame in honest work." "Honest, yes. Suitable, perhaps not." Preston glanced at Victoria, then at the donors. Some circles require more than good intentions and a toolbox. Lily's face flushed, but Caleb gently moved one hand behind him, asking her without words to stay calm. "Come on, Daddy," she whispered. "We can go." Caleb nodded once, not defeated, not bitter, only unwilling to let his child breathe another second of someone else's arrogance. Victoria watched him place the chair neatly under the table, watched him collect every tool without a sound, watched him protect his daughter with quiet discipline instead of wounded pride. The room still had music, flowers, money, and applause waiting in its lungs, but for Victoria, all of it had gone hollow. Preston lifted his glass as though he had won. Caleb reached Lily's side and took her hand. Then Victoria stepped away from the stage lights, and something in her face changed so completely that Elaine Porter, standing near the donor wall, lowered her program and whispered, "Oh no, she is about to tell the truth." Victoria crossed the ballroom with a calm that made every conversation fade by degrees, as if the room understood before the people did that money was about to lose its grip on someone. Her ivory gown moved softly over the deep blue carpet, pearl wrap glowing under amber lights. while the folded drawing from Lily stayed hidden inside her clutch like a small door waiting to open. Preston turned first, his smile still arranged for photographers. Victoria, dessert is in 6 minutes. Then 6 minutes is enough. For what? For honesty. The nearest donors stopped smiling. Elaine Porter closed her eyes for half a second, not in fear, but in recognition, because she had advised powerful people for 20 years and knew the sacred sound of a woman deciding she would no longer be managed. Victoria stepped onto the low stage beside the white grand piano, where a vase of roses stood beneath the Hayes Foundation banner. A server lowered his tray. A violinist let her bow rest against the strings. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate. Victoria took the microphone from the stand, but for a moment she did not speak to the guests. She looked at Caleb and Lily near the side exit, a father and daughter framed by tall windows where the rain had left silver trails on the glass. Caleb had one hand on the door handle, ready to leave with dignity rather than stay for pity. That almost broke her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria began, her voice clear, elegant, and stripped of its usual steel. Tonight was supposed to be about legacy. Preston straightened. "It still is," he said quietly through his smile. Victoria did not look at him. "I was expected to make an announcement that would secure a merger, satisfy a board, comfort investors, and preserve an empire built on names, signatures, and fear." A murmur rolled across the tables. Her uncle, seated near the front with a red silk tie and a frozen expression, gripped his program. Preston stepped closer. "Careful." Victoria finally turned to him. "That word has kept too many lonely people obedient." The room went utterly still. She placed one hand on the piano, not for drama, but for balance, because truth often asks the knees to remember what standing costs. "Last night, I was trapped in an elevator," she said. "Not for long. Not dangerously. But long enough to be afraid. A man helped me out. He did not know my net worth. He did not ask my title. He did not offer kindness with a bill attached." Caleb's face tightened, not from pride, but discomfort. He had never wanted his goodness displayed like a prize. Lily looked from her father to Victoria, listening with both hands curled around the straps of her backpack. "This morning," Victoria continued, softer now, "his daughter gave me a drawing and asked whether rich people still get lonely." A few guests shifted, embarrassed by tenderness because it was not on the program. Victoria opened her clutch and took out the small page Lily had drawn, the door with sunlight beneath it. "I have lived in houses with more rooms than some towns have families, and somehow this child understood me better than most adults in my life." Preston's face darkened behind its practiced charm. "Victoria, this is not the place." "It is exactly the place." She stepped down from the stage. Every eye followed her as she walked toward Caleb, past the donors, past Preston, past the future planned for her like a locked office. Caleb shook his head slightly. "Miss Hayes, you do not owe me anything." "I know. Then please do not make me part of a business arrangement." Her eyes glistened, but her voice held. "That is the first honest thing anyone has said to me all night." She stood before him, no longer above him, no longer protected by distance, wealth, or applause. "I am not asking because you are useful," she said. "I am asking because for the first time in years, I saw what a man looks like when respect matters more than power." Caleb breathed once, slow and heavy. Preston laughed sharply from behind her. "You cannot be serious." Victoria did not turn around. She looked only at Caleb, then at Lily, whose small face had gone pale with worry and wonder. "Caleb Turner," Victoria said, her words trembling just enough to become human. "Would you marry me?" The ballroom erupted in scattered gasps and nervous laughter, but Caleb did not answer. He looked down at his daughter, and Lily stepped forward before anyone could mistake silence for consent. Lily stepped in front of Caleb with both hands wrapped around her backpack straps, not boldly, not dramatically, but with the quiet courage of a child who had learned that small voices can still carry truth when grown-ups forget how to speak it. The ballroom lights glittered above her hair, and the soft gold reflected in her eyes, making her look even younger than 8 and somehow wiser than every person seated near the white roses and silver plates. Caleb lowered himself slightly, his face full of concern. "Sweetheart, you do not have to say anything." Lily looked at him first. "I know." Then she turned to Victoria. "But somebody should." A hush spread across the Grand Ellison so completely that the fountain in the lobby outside sounded like distant rain. Victoria stood with one hand still near the microphone, her ivory gown shining under the chandeliers, her beautiful face open now in a way no magazine had ever captured. Preston folded his arms. This is absurd. She is a child. Lily did not look at him. Children know when adults are pretending. A few guests lowered their eyes. Elaine Porter pressed her lips together, holding back the smallest, saddest smile. Caleb reached for Lily's shoulder, but she gently touched his fingers, asking him without words to trust her the way she trusted him when life felt too large. Miss Hayes, Lily said, careful with every word. My daddy fixes broken things, but he is not something people use when they are scared. Victoria's breath caught. The words did not embarrass her. They found her. They walked past her money, her boardroom voice, her perfect posture, and stood in the lonely place she had hidden since childhood. Lily continued, her voice soft but steady. He can love someone who has a big house or a little house. He can love someone who wears diamonds or work shoes. He can even be alone if that is what keeps his heart safe. Caleb closed his eyes for a moment, and the pain in his face was not shame. It was love being defended by the very child he had tried to protect. Lily looked down at her sneakers, then back up. But he cannot marry someone who is asking because everybody else made her afraid. Preston gave a sharp, uncomfortable laugh. How touching. Are we letting children decide corporate futures now? Victoria turned toward him at last. The warmth in her expression vanished, not into cruelty, but into clarity. No, Preston. We are letting truth interrupt arrogance. That single sentence moved through the room like a bell. Preston's smile collapsed by a fraction. Victoria's uncle looked away. The donors who had laughed earlier now sat as stiff as statues at their expensive tables. Lily took one step closer to Victoria. If you really like my daddy, you should come when nobody is watching. Bring coffee. Ask him about mom. Ask him what makes him tired. Ask him what makes him laugh. And do not ask him to save you until you are ready to stay. Victoria covered her mouth with trembling fingers, not to hide tears, but because speech had become too small for what she felt. No one had ever asked her to become worthy before. They had asked her to be impressive, profitable, elegant, silent, available, impossible to wound. This child had asked her to be real. Caleb's voice came low beside Lily. That is enough, honey. Did I say it wrong? No, he whispered, touching her hair. You said it better than I could. Victoria slowly lowered herself until she was kneeling on the deep blue carpet in front of Lily, careless of cameras, careless of headlines, careless of the room that had once measured her by height, wealth, and command. You are right, she said, and the words broke gently as they left her. I was afraid. Lily studied her, not cruelly, only honestly. Everybody gets scared. Victoria nodded. But I should not have made your father the answer to a question I was too frightened to face. Caleb looked at her then, and for the first time, there was no wall between the woman with everything and the man who had been treated as though he had little. There was only silence, grace, and a child standing between them like a candle in a room full of polished glass. Victoria opened her clutch, removed Lily's drawing of the tiny door, and held it against her heart. I think, she whispered, I am standing outside the better room. And nobody in the ballroom laughed anymore. Victoria remained on one knee before Lily, while the Grand Ellison held its breath around them, all crystal light, white roses, blue carpet, and faces that had come for power but stayed to witness something holier than influence. Preston looked from the donors to the cameras, searching for a way to make dignity look foolish, but there are moments when arrogance loses its language. Elaine Porter stepped forward first, calm and precise, and placed a folder on the nearest table. For the record, she said, the Hayes voting agreement does not require marriage. It requires leadership continuity, and I have already prepared an independent governance proposal that protects the company without selling anyone's future. Victoria turned toward her, stunned. Elaine gave the faintest smile. I was waiting for you to choose yourself. A low murmur moved through the room, different from gossip now, softer, humbled. Victoria's uncle stood as if to object, but no one followed him. Preston set down his glass with a brittle sound. You are making a sentimental mistake. Caleb answered before Victoria could. His voice was quiet, but it reached every table. No, sir. She is making a human one. That silenced him more completely than any speech could have. Victoria rose slowly, not as the untouchable woman from the magazines, but as someone who had just walked through a locked door and found air on the other side. She removed the diamond ring Preston had placed in a velvet box for the evening, carried it to the piano, and laid it there beneath the roses. I will not marry for leverage, she said. I will not call fear wisdom. And I will not let a good man and his child become props in a life I was too afraid to refuse. Caleb swallowed, his hand still resting protectively on Lily's shoulder. Miss Hayes, he said gently, you do not have to explain anything to us. Yes, I do, she replied. Not because you demand it. Because respect deserves truth. She turned to Lily. I should not have asked your father for forever when I had not yet learned how to stay for tomorrow. Lily looked up at her. Tomorrow is a good place to start. A quiet laugh, tender and relieved, passed through a few guests, and this time nobody used it to wound. Victoria nodded, tears bright but steady. Then tomorrow, may I bring coffee? Caleb looked at Lily. Lily looked at Caleb. The whole room seemed to wait on the small democracy of a father and daughter who had survived more than anyone in that ballroom knew. Coffee is okay, Lily said, then lifted one finger. But not the fancy, tiny kind. Caleb nearly smiled. She means regular coffee. Regular coffee, Victoria promised. And maybe pancakes, Lily added. One step at a time, Caleb said, though warmth had entered his voice. Outside, the last of the rain slid down the tall windows, and Providence shone under streetlights like a city forgiven for a little while. The cameras lowered. The donors stopped whispering. Preston walked out without applause, and nobody chased him. Victoria stood beside Caleb and Lily, not touching what she had not earned, not claiming what had not been freely given, simply present. For a woman who had owned towers, jets, board seats, and headlines, standing there without control felt strangely like grace. Caleb picked up his tool bag, then paused by the repaired chair Preston had used to mock him. He ran one hand over the steady wooden leg, making sure it would hold. That was who he was. Even after insult, he left things better than he found them. Victoria saw it, and so did everyone else. Lily slipped her hand into his. Daddy, she whispered. Mommy would like her. Caleb looked toward the ceiling as if love really had changed rooms, as if somewhere beyond chandeliers and rain light, someone gentle had heard. He did not answer with a promise. He answered with truth. Maybe someday, sweetheart. Victoria accepted the words without flinching, because someday given with dignity was worth more than yes spoken under pressure. And when Caleb and Lily walked toward the side doors, Victoria did not stop them. She only held Lily's drawing against her heart and watched them go, understanding at last that love is not something wealth can purchase, rescue, or command. It is something earned in small mornings, regular coffee, honest apologies, and the courage to stay when life becomes hard. Behind her, the ballroom remained silent, not empty, but changed, because everyone there had seen it. A single father who never raised his voice, a little girl who told the truth, and a billionaire who finally learned that the most beautiful kind of power is the grace to become worthy of love.